Today, we're going to trace the epic story of how thousands of scattered islands, once ruled by powerful sea kings and sultans, were forged over centuries into the single nation we know as the Philippines. So let's dive in. And that's really the big question here, isn't it? Before there was a single Philippines, you had this incredibly complex world of maritime states, rich sultanates, and all these different societies. So how on earth did they all become one? To really understand this, our story has to begin long before any European ships ever appeared on the horizon. This wasn't some empty waiting land. It was a bustling, deeply interconnected world filled with sophisticated societies. Okay, so the key concept you absolutely need to get your head around for this era is something called a thalassocracy. It sounds complicated, but it's simple. For these kingdoms, power wasn't about land borders, it was about controlling the sea. We're not talking about isolated tribes here. These were sea-based empires. Your influence came from controlling the trade routes and having the strongest ships on the water. And man, was this power diverse. You had the Kingdom of Tondo up in the north. Then you had the powerful sultanates of Maguindanao and Sulu way down in the south. The whole archipelago was this incredible mosaic of states, sometimes competing, sometimes working together, each with its own unique culture and government. And this isn't just ancient folklore, you know? This history is deep, and it's documented. We have the Laguna copperplate inscription from all the way back in 900 CE. And it's not a poem. It's a legal document clearing someone's debt. That's a huge sign of a complex society with laws and writing. For centuries, these kingdoms were big-time players in Asian trade, and by the 1300s, Islam was already arriving and reshaping the culture of the South. And that brings us to Act 2, where this entire world gets turned completely upside down. A new global power shows up, and for the very first time, these thousands of islands are about to be brought together under a single flag. The year is 1521. This is the moment that changes everything. Ferdinand Magellan, sailing for Spain, makes contact. Now, as you might know, it didn't end well for Magellan himself. He was killed in the Battle of Mactan, but it was too late. The link to the West had been forged, and it was permanent. So here's the crucial point, this dramatic shift from many to one. Starting in 1565, Spain began to consolidate this fragmented landscape of kingdoms into a single colony. And yeah, it was a unity forced upon them by an outside power. But it was also the first time these islands all shared a single government, a single fate, which actually planted the seeds of a shared identity that would, centuries later, rise up against that very power. And this is literally when the name the Philippines is born. The whole archipelago gets named Las Islas Filipinas in honor of the Spanish king Philip II. For the very first time, these islands had a single name on the world map, even if it was a colonial one. You really can't overstate the impact of over 300 years of Spanish rule. It's just immense. It brought widespread Christianity, a unified legal system, and some of the oldest modern universities in all of Asia. And here's a wild historical detail. For most of that time, the Philippines wasn't even ruled directly from Spain. It was administered from the Viceroyalty of New Spain, what we now call Mexico. But as we know, empires don't last forever. As Spanish power began to fade at the end of the 19th century, a new ambitious power was rising across the Pacific. And that brings us to our next act. Fast forward to 1898. This is another massive turning point. Spain loses the Spanish-American War, and as a result, the Philippines is handed over to the United States. Now, this was not a peaceful transition at all. It sparked the brutal Philippine-American War, but it officially kicked off a brand new colonial chapter. Under American rule, things were a bit different. They laid out this step-by-step roadmap towards self-governance. After a period of direct American rule, they established the Philippine Assembly in 1907, giving Filipinos a voice. This eventually led to the Commonwealth in 1935, which was a critical 10-year transitional government specifically designed to prepare the nation for full, complete independence. And that brings us to our final act, the turbulent, challenging, but ultimately triumphant journey to becoming a fully sovereign republic in the 20th century. And let me tell you, this final path was anything but easy. World War II brought a devastating Japanese occupation that put the brakes on everything. But after the war in 1946, that promise of freedom was finally fulfilled. The independent Republic of the Philippines was born. And then, decades later, in 1986, the country would stun the world with its peaceful people power revolution, proving just how deeply its democratic ideals had taken root. So, when you just step back and look at the whole picture, it's an incredible story. From a scattered archipelago of sea kingdoms, to a unified Spanish colony, to a U.S. territory, and then finally to a sovereign republic. This is a nation literally forged in the fires of trade, faith, and revolution. And the only question left is, what's the next chapter?